I remember walking into the Palomino and I was like, this is where Linda Ronstadt and Graham Parson played. And I was just so into them. I just looked around and I just thought it was such a warm looking club. It was lots of wooden tables and the lighting, and there was like, I don't know, it was butcher paper or something on the walls. The stage was here, and they would have like some guy that painted in fluorescent paint coming, Doug Kershaw, Joe Ely, maybe, and I was like, that was such a cool way to advertise who's coming. And so people would just know, and they could have the date, And as I walked in, there was this guy at the door, and he was a real big, round guy. And I found out his name was Tiny. And he was the doorman. He was just kind of gruff, but, how much, it cost $10 to get in or whatever. I can't remember the price at this point. But getting in the door and finding a place to sit, and the waitresses, with their Palomino T-shirts on, with their bosoms busting out and cut, short, and big high hairdos and a lot of makeup. And I was like, this place is cool, and there'd be a band on stage, like the Palomino Riders, like playing this great music. The sound was always great, and I didn't dare go backstage. There was like an area back there. And I met, that was one of the first places I met Jerry Lee. And I met Lacey J. Dalton there. And I remember after I'd met Roseanne Cash, because I used to open for Rodney, and those later on, I got to meet Roseanne Cash's mom, who was from San Antonio. And she was like, Rosie wrote a song called Bandera Highway. I want you to hear it. So she sent her a tape of it. And so it was really interesting to be there and make friends with all these people that you idolized, and I would go there and see Emmylou Harris play, and Gary Stewart, George Jones, Tammy Wynette. I met Waylon Jennings there, and he smelled like leather and cigarettes, I can't remember who was on stage. It was somebody probably like Joe Ely, there was always somebody good to see. I never went when it wasn't. This is in the early days, before it kind of went more, like later it went more rockabilly and punk rock, But in the early days, in the 70s, at this point, when I met Waylon, I was one of the regulars by then. Because I was always, signing up for the Palomino Talent Contest. And I ended up winning like about 7 times in a row, and then they put me in the big finale, and I won that. And then after that, I would start getting bookings, and on the weekends, and put a band together and stuff. So one of the managers said, "Would you like to meet Waylon Jennings?" And I said, "Is he here?" And because I was just such a big fan of Waylon and Willie, and I remember I really loved Gail Davies, too. She was kind of part of that outlaw scene. I hadn't met her yet. I didn't meet her till I was traveling in Europe. But, he was really warm, and he gave me a hug, and that's how I got a whiff of the leather and the smoke, And he wasn't playing. He just got off the road to come see who was playing and hanging out. And he kind of just had this long, greasy hair under his cowboy hat, and he was just so warm. And later on, I got to play with him. Him and Jesse were playing I believe we were in England, and I still have the poster from him and Jesse, and he remembered meeting me, and I got my picture taken with him. That would have been around in the 80s, early 80s.
You guys just happened to cross on the road in England?
We were on the same bill. Yeah, I think it was in Bournemouth, it was during, there's Mervyn Kahn. You know who he is?
Why don't you tell the people about
Okay, Mervyn Kahn was a promoter in England, and he would do these giant country music festivals. I can't remember the name of the festivals, but it would be at Wembley Stadium in was that in London, I think? You know, Wimberley's where they do like sports and everything too, but they would do this, you know, they bring everybody in. I remember Lori Morgan was there, Tammy Wynette was there. Lori Morgan's husband that passed away, Keith Whitley was there. I was there. And I think maybe KT Oslin. There was a lot of Nashville people that had been signed to country music back in those days. Country music was not as big as it is now at all. But it was cool, you know. I'll tell you something that reminds me of Wimberley was that I just wanted to meet Tammy Wynette so bad. And we were staying at the same hotel, so I would hang out in the lobby like for hours, or the bar, and I got to make friends with all her musicians. Or I would get in the elevator and it would be Tammy's hairdresser and her assistant. I was like, is Tammy coming down soon, you know? And so I never got to meet her. I think it was 3 days we were staying at that hotel. But I got to see her sing, of course. We were on the same day. So I want to say about 6 to 8 months later, I was in LA playing a festival with Wanda Jackson. I was her background singer. That's how I met Wanda. And then I went to go see Tammy play. And I'm like, I'm going to rush over there. And her band members remembered me. And they're like, hey, Rosie, you want to come and sit on an amp? On the, you know, backstage, you can sit on an amp here, or an amp cover, anvil case, you know. And so I sat there watching her from the side, and it was like fabulous. And she finished the show and walked right past me, and I'm like, wow, that was so good. Tammy Wynette, she's my favorite singer in the whole world. And I just loved everything about her hairdo, everything. And so they got an encore, and she came back to go back, and she came right up to me. She came up to me and she said, Rosie, and she held my hand and she said, I heard you sing in Wimberley. And she goes, and I just loved your voice. You're such a great singer. And I couldn't even talk. I was like, thank you, you know. And she went on to perform and then walked right past me again. And you know, she probably opened the door that I could have gone to her trailer and knocked and said, can I come in and say hello? I was way too shy in those days, especially. Yeah, I was like, I could have died after that, you know. But yeah, that was the coolest thing that ever happened to me, you know, I think. There was a couple of times when Buddy Lee Attractions was my agent, they put me on the opening act for George Jones a couple times. And so at this point, I think that the one you're talking about was when I opened for him at the Greek Theater in Hollywood. And it was so, you know what was cool about that? It was that it was raining, like just sprinkling. And it started when I was opening the show, but then when he played, because, you know, it's an outdoor venue. Me and my boyfriend at the time, James Infeld, I just remember having the umbrella and kind of hugging each other and watching George Jones in the rain. I'll never forget that. And every single song he sang was like a hit. And we both just had the chills. And so we went to his bus afterwards, and we took pictures of us. Like he got the one of me and George, and I got the one of him and George. So that's the picture you were talking about. And his wife, Nancy, was super sweet. And I think I saw him one more time backstage when I was on the Opry. We were on the Opry, Grand Ole Opry, the new one. And she ended up sending me a photograph, an autograph picture of him.
That's nice.
So yeah, he was really nice to me. He was just a gentleman and respectful. Like, I kind of got the feeling that he thought I was a good singer and that I was okay, you know. And I just kind of felt respect coming from him, and he was very gentle and happy to see me, you know, whenever I'd come around. You know who my biggest fan was? Buck Owens.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I just felt like of all my peers that he was the biggest fan, and he would talk about me. I have like a recording of him talking about me on the radio and being interviewed, like, who do you like that's new, and who do you think's the next big thing? And like, oh, Rosie Flores, you know, and she's a song away, you know. He would say things like that, and I got to play the Crystal Palace and got to open for him, and just, you know, every time I was around him. And I first met him when I got signed in Crying Over You as my first single on Reprise Records. And I would go to Bakersfield, and it was kind of before Dwight had pulled him out and got him recording again. And so I could sit in his office with him, and, you know, at KNON radio, and he was just like visiting your uncle or something. He was just so cool. He was really happy to meet me and just telling me how much he loved my songs, and you know, just compliments flying out of him, you know, and, you know, just asking me where I was from and what was it like growing up in San Antonio, and you know, just chit-chatting, you know. And it was a really good visit. And he was like, I'm going to play the heck out of your song. And he goes, my nephew will play your song too. His nephew had an Arizona station that I think he was also owner of. I'm having a hard time remembering the call letters of that. But he was also a big supporter of mine. And I remember when I got to open for Buck and Dwight in Austin, and he was also really cool with me backstage. And when else did I see him? Oh, when Hot Dog came out, he had an album called Hot Dog, and we were at the Roxy, and he performed there, and I got my picture taken with him and the radio DJ. And he just was always so friendly. It was like seeing your Uncle Buck or something, you know. He was just sweet as can be. I'm not sure what those were, but I heard that he had a garage full of them. He had them made, and that he would, you know, give those out to people. And a couple of my friends got them. I always was wondering if I was ever going to get one, you know. A friend of mine was a promoter in Switzerland. The first time I went to Europe. He used to do a singer-songwriter festival in Frutigen, Switzerland. Frutigen. And he would bring people like Johnny Cash there and Joe Ely. And I think he brought, you know, Roseanne and Rodney and all kinds of songwriters out there. Tom Russell, Steve, what was Steve's last name?
Steve Young.
Steve Young, thank you. You're really helping me get these names together. I appreciate it. We're a good team. And so Oshie was given one after he had Buck play in Switzerland, and he had that hanging on the wall. And I would play that one, and because Oshie wasn't a guitar player, but I take it off the wall and tune it up and play him a song, you know, after dinner. But unfortunately, that house, when him and his wife were, I think they were in visiting in Israel or somewhere where her family was from at the time, and their house caught on fire and the whole thing burned down, and he lost all of his memorabilia, including that guitar. And I think he was the saddest about losing that Buck Owens guitar. And Buck would have these little gold plates that would be stuck onto the guitars, and it would say, "To Oshie, love Buck," or something. He would get these little things, and anybody that got a guitar got a little gold plate on there. You know, some words he would say, you know. You know, I never did talk much tech with him, but he did tell me that Don Rich was his favorite singer in the whole world, and that, you know, he just would tell me how much he loved his harmony playing and his guitar playing, and how sad he was when he lost him. He said it was like losing an arm. You know, he was just really attached to him, and it just, I think they had that kind of brotherhood, and they used to laugh a lot together. And he told me he was a really funny guy, and so we did talk about Don Rich a little bit. Yeah, I opened for I would have met him first at the Palomino because it was after I, kind of developed my career, and then I went out and started opening for all these people. But I was in kind of near Santa Cruz, and there was a club down there, and I got to open for him a couple of times there. Maybe once at the Catalyst in Santa Cruz, and the other place was a little further out, maybe further up north. We talked, and I met his wife, and he was really nice. He was complimentary about my voice. And then I met him. I opened for him at the Palomino, and by the second time I opened for him at Palomino, he had a different wife. And I remember riding in they were like, come and hang out with us at the bar. So I rode in the Cadillac with him and his wife, and we went and had drinks at the bar. And that was at it was a Howard Johnson's hotel, which was 3 minutes from where I lived in Studio City. And they had a really great bar there. And so a lot of times they would put artists up there. Like I remember the Everly Brothers staying there and singing Happy Birthday to me after their show. And I was good friends with Albert, still am, good friends with Albert Lee, who was playing in the band at the time. This was 1984. And it was my birthday. They played at the Greek Bowl. Yeah, that hotel, you could go there, and there all these country stars would go from the Palomino to there, or the Greek Bowl, or Universal Amphitheater, because it was just like centrally located there. And, I think I probably met Tanya Tucker there, and it was like, it was just a fun place to go get a drink because you knew you'd run into some country artist. And I was so young, I was like 20-something, Well, the Palomino wasn't a big, giant venue, but nor was the other place. It wasn't like playing, a bigger, like Greek Bowl or something like that. But I did play a festival with him in McMinnville, Tennessee. And I remember, was Sonny Burgess on that one with me? He might have been. I didn't get this, I can't remember saying hi to Jerry Lee, but his guitar player was a fan of my playing. And
Is that Kenny Lovelace?
Kenny Lovelace, thank you again. And so we were always like, hey, Rosie, And so I guess through the years I got to know him really well from all the times I was around opening for them and stuff. And I even have a marquee that's in Hollywood at the Wiltern Theater, and it says Jerry Lee Lewis and Rosie Flores, and my name was in the same size lettering as his. And I opened for him. That one was solo acoustic. That was kind of cool because I had already joined this punk rock band called the Screaming Sirens, but I had joined them as a bass player. But then they heard me play all this lead guitar opening for Jerry Lee, because they all went, of course, big fans. And they were like, we're putting you on lead, and we're going to get a different bass player. And I'm like, it's fine with me, I just want to play in a band, I never saw him be too wild. I mean, I don't ever remember seeing him being, drunk or anything like that. He just was like, when he'd walk around, he just seemed very proud, he walked tall, he had that kind of he was very self-assured, and that's kind of what I noticed about him. But he was always a gentleman. I think I've always had a way, especially when I was young, charming people. And so when I would charm people, they would just be nice to me and they would like me. I would be likable. So I never got on anybody's nerves. I wanted to make sure that, I just would pay compliments to them and try not to be in anybody's way too much. I was sensitive to that. So hopefully I didn't make too many enemies out there, you know. And I know I've had some people be, maybe more women than men, be upset that I don't remember them. You know, I met you 5 times. And I'm like, I'm so sorry, but that's a problem with me, is my memory. I mean, I don't have Alzheimer's or dementia or anything, but it's always been a tough thing when I meet, 30 people a night, and I might shake hands and meet somebody. And you know who did that to me? And I can't blame her at all, but it was probably 4 times I met Emmy Lou, and every time I met her, it was like she was meeting me for the first time. Oh, nice to meet you, But then, after I got signed to Reprise, I think she was remembering me from that point on. She gave me a vest that's hanging in the Country Music Hall of Fame right now, because I'm in the Western Edge exhibit right now. And I gave that to the Hall of Fame, and I didn't even really know the story. My manager at the time, Tracy Gershon, brought it to the studio, and she said, Emmy Lou wants to give this to you. And she said, Graham Parsons gave it to her. And, but maybe Graham gave it to her, but I think the story is that Linda Ronstadt wore it first. So it went from Ronstadt to Emmy to me. And I wore the crap out of that thing. I loved it. It fit me perfect. It was a little red sequin cowboy vest with white leather fringe that was covered with rhinestones, and then little two white horses that were covered in rhinestones. It was just little leather white horse heads, and the fringe. And I was like, you'll see a lot of pictures of me wearing that, because I got photographed a lot in it. I'm happy to give it away to the Hall of Fame, because I don't want anything to ever happen to me and then it ends up, somebody's Halloween costume or something. Who knows what happens to your stuff when you leave the planet, So I've actually got, because I don't know how much longer. Maybe, I made a pact with a friend. I said, we're going to live to 100 and we're going to die in our sleep, okay? Because we wouldn't be able to stand losing each other, my best friends. I actually went into my archives in my garage, and I've got everything. My friend Kimmy Rhodes helped me put everything in order, and, all these things can go to the museum someday. So I told my niece, the rest of the stuff is like a junk drawer, You can, get rid of everything, but anything that has a tag on it has to go to the museum, because there's all history there between calendars and contracts and posters and photographs, and somebody's going to care about that someday. So, and I go, but you guys can have first pick of whatever you want, Okay, well, for one thing, Palomino doesn't exist anymore, but when it did, you would do a 90-minute set would be your show. There's usually an opening act, an opening band, which sometimes would just be the Palomino Riders. And there was a guy named Jimmy Snyder, who was the lead singer, who actually moved to Nashville for a while. And he was playing on Lower Broadway. He would play Tootsies. And he was a songwriter, too, and was a great guy. Thumbs Carlisle was the guitar player, and I think Steve Duncan was the drummer for a while, and Greg Humphreys was on bass. I mean, they had a really good band. So they were either opening act, or there might be somebody else coming in as opening act, and then if you were the headliner, you would, go on at something like 9. And I don't remember doing 2 sets. And at the end of the night, they would, just keep people there eating. And they used to serve really good steaks there. After Tommy died, though, the place started going downhill a little bit. Because he was, talk about wearing a gazillion hats. So the Palominos started back with him and his brother. And I think it was originally called, was it called the Mule Kick? I think it was called the Mule Kick, because my friends that are doing a documentary on it are called Mule Kick Productions. So, and they have a label. So Tommy he ordered all the food, he ordered all the booze, he hired all the employees, he booked all the shows. And you would go into his office and his desk was just literally piles and piles of paper and bills. And he had this little dog that would be up there on the desk, and he would be petting that little dog, and that dog slept there next to him. It was like it was a Chihuahua, but a hairy one, maybe? I think that's what he was. I remember my friend took a picture of him, like with his hands over his eyes, just like going, oh God, And she got a picture of him. And, but he did a lot. And I think when he passed away, who was going to be there to do all that? So I think his nephew took over and tried to keep it going. I think the food stopped happening, and the parking lot got taken over, and maybe he wasn't paying the bill for the parking lot, and maybe it was owned by somebody else, I don't know. But Ronnie Mack came in, who was a guy that was doing a barn dance across town and having all these, country artists play all night long. And we would just all play for free and jam with each other. And it would be people like Dave Alvin would be there, and Greg Lease, and James Infeld, and me, and anybody that was a songwriter, Randy Weeks. And so we brought that to the Palomino on Tuesday nights. And it was the barn dance at the Tuesday night. And it ended up being a lot of rockabilly artists, and country and rockabilly. And so that kept it going. It was jam-packed. It was free to get in. And, it just was the best hang. And so that's kind of saved the Palomino for many years. I would say at least another 5 years, And then, I don't know, the neighborhood there in North Hollywood got a little seedy, and people were getting killed at the taco truck, and, there was just a lot of crime. So, I don't know, it just went downhill, and they closed it. I love remembering the Palomino.
Was Harry Dean Stanton around a lot?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he was around. I didn't talk with him. I was too shy, but I know my friend James Infeld was friends with him. You know who I remember seeing a lot? His first name was Hervé Velachaez. Yeah. He came in there almost every time I was there. He was there wearing a little cowboy hat and had a little vest on. He was just like a cowboy, and had a little scarf, a little scarf on the side. And I remember talking to him quite a few times, and I got his autograph from my younger sister. And I don't ever remember him performing. Did he perform? I don't think so.
He would sing on talk shows, like on Johnny Carson's show. He would come out and he would sing.
Was he on the Carson show? Because, he might have performed, and I just didn't catch those nights.
It was more like a recitation.
Oh, okay.
But because of his voice, it seemed, it was a...
The plane. Oh, I remember seeing Roger Miller, and he was watching a show. It might have been George Jones, somebody, and I remember he was with his wife. I don't know if it was his wife or his girlfriend, but he just looked so handsome to me, and I was just sitting here keeping my eye on Roger Miller, and I remembered, I'll never forget, his wife just kept running her hands through his hair. I was like, oh, you lucky thing. I want to be that girl. If you're in Austin on a Tuesday night, come and see me at the gallery with Jim Stringer and Josh Flowers and Lindsey Green. Or if you see me with the Talisman, see Mike Molnar on guitar, Chris Sensat on drums, and Michael Archer, or Josh Williams on bass. And please buy those records. Come see us live. Buy T-shirts. Keep me alive. Support me.